Thank you for joining us for Public Safety Echo. The Public Safety Echo project is the world's first of its kind effort to use the Echo model to address safety issues by bringing residents, workers, and businesses together in an online, social, and professional space to share skills, increase knowledge, and solve problems. In weekly sessions, Public Safety Echo teaches skills, educates partners in different aspects of a healthy community, and empowers community members.
All right. Good afternoon.
Are you recording yet?
Oh, I'm recording, Mike. Yes.
Okay.
When it's downtown, I got the crew here to record. You have to remind me when it's Nob Hill. You're okay.
I will do that. Thank you.
Well, welcome. Thank you for reminding me to record there, Mike. But welcome to the Downtown Public Safety Echo. I, of course, am your coordinator, Daryl DeLoach. Just wondering how everyone's doing with the heat today. It seemed like it went from spring to summer pretty quickly there. And, of course, I'm riding my bike to work today, so it's a little extra exhausting. But I wanted to go ahead, and I don't have any of the downtown officers with me today, so I just wanted to remind folks, let's please turn on our cameras. It's all about all teach, all learn. We will forego having any introductions. I was just looking for any new faces as usual. The Downtown Public Safety Echo's goal is to increase safety by bringing residents, workers, visitors, and businesses together in an online social space to share skills, increase knowledge, and solve problems. Any views expressed by police officers or participating city officials are not meant to give legal advice, or only meant to educate or provide insight into the discussion. And today's presentation will be from the Crimes Against Children's Unit. I have Sergeant Brandon Watts here. He can introduce himself and the detective with him.
Hi, I'm Sergeant Brandon Watts with the Albuquerque Police Department Crimes Against Children Unit. I've been here for about a month now with the Crimes Against Children Unit. I've been with APD since 2020, and prior to that I was with the Torrance County Sheriff's Office.
I'm Detective Martin Pino with the Crimes Against Children Unit. I've been with the unit for a little over a year now. Joined Albuquerque Police Department in August of 2018. I've had prior law enforcement experience with Santa Fe Police Department as well as Belen Police Department.
All right. I'm going to go through some quick announcements here. I wanted to let people know, first off, that later this month, the CIT unit will be offering some de-escalation training for business owners in the downtown as well as the Nob Hill corridor. I have the dates and information there up on the screen. You can go to cabq.gov/de-escalation to find out more and to register. These are free classes open to the public. I believe they're going to have 50 participants per session. So if you're interested, you may want to sign up sooner as opposed to later. And then, of course, I was mentioning today is, May is the beginning of sort of the Bike Albuquerque month. So there's different events today. There were stops and places you can go to get maps about the biking trails and other activities and stuff going on this month. And, of course, I was also a participant in there's my phone going off for some reason. I was a participant in the Memorial Ride this weekend. I'll just ignore my phone in my bag there, but a 30K ride, actually the Memorial Ride is 100 Ks. Did you guys participate in that at all? No? I'm gonna have to stop my phone. There we go. So yeah, the ride is 100 Ks all the way to Santa Fe. You sure you don't? I mean, you look pretty.
He might be into that.
100 all the way to Santa Fe?
All the way to Santa Fe.
That's That sounds atrocious.
Yeah.
You can ride the train up there, get on here, and then get off up there.
Well, I mean, I can as long as it's like a downhill climb, but that uphill incline, I don't know about that.
I'll do all the downhill portions.
Yeah.
What? I have my phone in my bag going off. I can't find it. There we go.
Is this the person calling you from China?
Okay, sorry. I don't know who's calling me. It's one of those, afternoon calls from India, and they're asking you about something you don't know anything about.
Extend your car warranty?
Yeah, car warranty or...
There you go.
Gee, okay. Anyway, so where were we? Oh, so actually I wanted to actually show a little news clip from the Memorial Ride. Mark, do you have that set up?
Yeah, you want to play the two back-to-back?
Just play the shorter one. I think there's one just 53 seconds.
Law enforcement was out on the streets this morning on bikes. It's all part of their 13th Memorial Bike Ride fundraiser to honor officers who lost their lives while serving the community. The 64-mile route started in downtown Albuquerque and went east toward Cedar Crest along Highway 14. And the funds raised go to helping officers, their families, and the community.
All of the funds raised for the ride go to the APD Chaplin Benevolent Fund, so it supports the Chaplin unit. They are not employees of the city, but they all volunteer their time to go out to calls to help our officers out on some of the very difficult calls, to work with the families of the community and in the community.
Now, the ride had 6 stops along the way to remember where officers have given their lives while serving.
Yeah, one of the regulars here, Van, convinced me to participate. And like I said, I just participated in the 30K, but it's all uphill out of downtown all the way up into the Harris Canyon. But ironically, one of the first stops in the Memorial Ride is where Officer King and Smith, I believe his name was.
Yes.
Which was one of the incidents that really spurred me to doing more of the de-escalation and the CIT role play. So I was surprised how just emotionally impactful it was to sort of go along that ride and be reminded of those. But it was an honor to participate. I was the last person to complete the 30K, but I did complete it. So I'm very proud of that. Also, I know Mike Krachowski, you said you wanted to make an announcement. There you go.
Yes, I was trying to type the information into the chat, and I will finish that. But there's an event happening this Sunday afternoon, 12 to 6 p.m. It's called the Clean Albuquerque event, and it is going to get focused on trying to get food and water and fruit to homeless community members. It's at the old CVS on the northeast corner of Louisiana and Central. It's been organized by a brand new resident of Albuquerque, a young man from Chicago area, and he got off the bus downtown from Chicago, and he looked at all the homeless people and he says, I've got to do something. And so he's trying to organize this. He's trying to get businesses and other nonprofits and community organizations to get out there to support. And Daryl, I was going to text you or email you about this as well, because I've been invited to come out there with my video equipment and sit down with folks on the street and help them share their stories about what it's like. And I thought perhaps you'd like to stop in on that. So I'll get in touch with you on that later.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
And one other thing, and I'll put this into chat too. I just did a 1-minute public service announcement for an upcoming community event, a local community debate on ranked choice voting, offered by, I'm organizing it, by the Braver Angels of North and Central New Mexico. It's on Saturday, May 30th, 2 o'clock at the UNM Continuing Education Center. I'll try to
okay.
type that in too.
Okay, thanks. Well, I wanted to add too, we have women in leadership that are downtown here, and they are also having a youth violence prevention summer camp, which will start in early July. You can go to program coordinator, all one word, at wilnminc.org. Or you can contact them at 505-369-1731. This is an event for youth this summer to give them some fun activities and stuff. I like to share those. I know ACS has a summer of nonviolence that they do. Several of the other organizations in the ID and downtown try to come up with those activities. So I'll share those as they come up. And one other oh, that was it for the announcements. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one. So there's a distinguished gentleman motorcycle ride that's this Sunday, and they have 135 riders that will end up downtown here, and they raise money for men's health and prostate cancer.
Oh, okay.
And their goal is to raise $25,000 for it. So that's on Sunday.
Okay. And is that a ride that's going to occur up Central, or do you know where?
I do, but I can't share the route ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
On there.
Okay.
But they're going to end up very close to where we are.
Okay. Well, yeah, oddly enough, I saw like some Czech motorcycle club going up and down Central today. They had Czech flags, and it was like Route 66 branding or something.
Yeah,
but
I think it's something different, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, they're a great organization.
Cool, thank you. All right, well, we can move on to our guest here today. Unless anyone else has any other announcements, you can just shout it out. I was checking. Give you a minute. No, nobody has anything there? Fabulous. Mike dropped that information with the website and everything about the Clean ABQ happening. So let me get ready. So crimes against children. We sort of were talking a little earlier. I think people quite often forget that there's these vulnerable people in our community that experience, as we were saying, because of social media, because of just the change in climate. It's pretty tough being a youngster these days, and there's a lot of other influences and things that affect them on a crime level that when I was a youngster, wasn't even in the back of my mind. I was talking about when I was a little kid, my mom would give me a brown paper bag and send me out the door at 5 years old to walk to school. Mm-hmm. But Albuquerque has, I don't want to say necessarily an issue with sort of protecting its youth, but we need to do better. The schools, just education in general. You guys have a presentation here, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity to sort of, how did you get involved in this field?
So the reason I came to the Crimes Against Children unit is I'd spoken with some of the previous supervisors of the unit, because obviously one of my concerns, I have kids, and it's obviously very difficult to read about or hear the things that these kids are going through and some of the difficulties that they're facing in life and some of the abuse and neglect that's going on. So when I was speaking with some of the previous supervisors about their experience with the unit, they kind of explained how, while yes, it is still impactful, at least as a supervisor, and I can't speak for the detectives, at least for the supervisor, I'm a little more removed in that I don't necessarily interact directly with any of the victims or suspects or anything. So it kind of helps, that helps me at least be shielded personally, on a personal level,
right,
from some of the more horrifying, I guess, for lack of better terms, things.
Yeah, but I imagine you guys have a pretty heavy caseload.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think every detective's got more cases than they should, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Martin, how did you sort of...
Well, I've been a cop for almost 13 years now, and being with 3 different agencies and seeing the wide realm of child calls that I've been taking for these years, and the generations that have come about and kind of passed, especially with me being, I'm only 39, but like the generations have definitely changed from when I was a kid, like you said, literally getting a brown bag special and walking to school when I was 3rd grade, and now I'm not going to have my kid walk to school. That's just not what I do.
Yeah.
It's just, oddly enough, I enjoyed taking these kid calls when I was a cop in the field with all of these agencies, and when I rolled over to APD, I saw that they had a Crimes Against Children unit, and I felt like that was a place for me where I could do more and be more involved on a personal level.
Yeah.
And taking care of these kids, and because they're innocent victims, they're just trying to have a shot in life and trying to have a chance. And I feel like us as detectives and as our roles, we're trying to give them that chance and try to speak out for them in order to try to help them speak out. And in these stressful and unfortunate times that they're dealt with. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess what I was even trying to get at before is those adverse childhood experiences that seem to be very pervasive with the youth in Albuquerque, whether it's education or poverty or a variety of just exposures that they get here. I just feel like the youth in Albuquerque are already sort of dealing with some added issues. It's just sort of a shame to even think of them being victims of crime as well. I have the slides ready. We can sort of move right into those. Let me go ahead and bring that up and share my screen. Just give me a moment here. There we are. All right, so I have your slides up. We'll start from the beginning.
And so kind of to preface the PowerPoint here, this is kind of parsed down from some of the classes that we'll give to officers and people in the field as far as how to conduct child abuse investigations. So I kind of wanted to give an overall view, to everybody so they can understand maybe why certain things happen, why other things don't happen, and kind of the context of that, and kind of walk them through maybe a whole overview of an investigation and how it would work.
Okay. So I'll move to the next slide. There we go.
So obviously the call is going to start with some sort of initial dispatch. It may not always come in with some sort of child abuse call, right? It could be that somebody's calling in saying, oh, my kid fell, or they bumped their head or something like that, rolled off the bed. Those sort of things that don't, at least initially, sound like a child abuse call, right? But end up turning into some sort of child abuse investigation as the officers arrive on scene and start to learn things. A lot of times the parents are surprised when the police respond first, thinking, oh, I called for an ambulance. How come you're here? And sometimes those calls come to us as well.
So the dispatchers are they the ones sort of determining whether or not when those calls come in, or is this something you guys determine after the fact? Because I just know that the dispatchers sort of have that task when a call's coming in. Quite often you don't really know the real details, or someone might be deceptive or trying to cover things up. So are the dispatchers able to sort of make that determination when a call like a child fell or something like that?
Sometimes it just depends. Sometimes we don't get those calls until after the fact, when the kid's already being seen at the hospital or something like that, depending on the nature of the injuries and other things.
Right.
Sometimes the dispatcher is able to tell based on some of the things that are mentioned that this is something that law enforcement should probably respond to as well. Another way we'll get calls for service like this is through CYFD, through their central wide intake. We'll get what's called a SCI report. And so that's another way we get these calls, where somebody's contacted CYFD to make a report about or an allegation of child abuse or neglect. Right. Those reports all eventually come to law enforcement as well, and so we dispatch an officer to those to follow up on also.
Okay, and that would be an officer from your unit? right? Yeah.
No, it would start with a field officer generally.
okay.
Sometimes we'll send a detective directly out, but generally speaking, it'll be a field
Oh,
officer.
it'd start with the field officer and then they refer it up.
Mhm.
Okay. Fabulous.
So again, when the field officer arrives, their primary responsibilities, you're going to try to ensure the child is in a safe environment, get the medical attention if necessary. Sometimes we get calls from a school, hey, this kiddo showed up with a bruise or a bump, and then the officer gets there and they'll call an ambulance out if it's necessary to check on the child, or have them transported if it's something more severe, right? And then from there, they try to determine where the scene would be, where the incident occurred at, how the child got injured, those kinds of things. That way they can try to ensure that if there's any evidence that needs to be collected, it's preserved. And then sometimes they'll separate parties as well, depending on the nature of the investigation, right? If we believe that maybe one of the parents is responsible for the child's injuries, obviously we're going to try to separate that parent from the child so the child is safe. Those kinds of things, or separate parents if we believe that one or the other may be at fault, in order to get interviews with each.
Right.
Again, we'll conduct those initial interviews with everybody. What we call an outcry person is essentially the person that either contacted the police or contacted CYFD to make those initial reports, right?
Right.
A lot of times when a child discloses to somebody, that's with somebody they trust. So if they tell their teacher or their therapist or somebody that they trust something that has happened to them, they may not be as willing to tell an officer that shows up with a badge and a gun and all this equipment on them. So that's why it's important to try to speak to as many adults as possible as well, to try to corroborate that kid's story without having to re-interview the child over and over and over again. And if we do have to talk to the child, we try to just do what's called a minimal facts interview, where we just ask just enough questions to try to determine what, if any, crime occurred, and where it happened. And sometimes, depending on their age, we may get more than enough information at that point, or sometimes we get very limited information or no information as far as maybe jurisdiction or something. And Martin, if you ever have anything to chime in, feel free.
I was at the event that was at the Bonifacio Professional Center not too long ago. And that was one of the things that sort of surprised me. I guess your unit showed a demonstration of just how many times a child might have to tell that story or talk about it. And it was really, pushed home how important it is to really ensure their safety and give them that opportunity to tell that story one time in a situation where they can get that information out and not have to re-traumatize them. And it was just something that I didn't think about in sort of the course of a teacher, a parent, other authorities, an officer. I mean, I just imagine that's something that, is sort of the crux to really getting good information.
Yeah, so it definitely, they already have to tell their story more times than anybody wants to recount the worst day of their life, right?
Yeah.
And so we try to limit that impact on a child as much as possible. That's why initially, at least, we'll just do this minimal facts interview. That way we just try to capture enough information to say, yes, we need to proceed with an investigation, or there's not really anything here. And if we can get that information from an outcry person, then potentially the officer doesn't even need to speak with the child.
Right.
And so that was another reason I wanted to incorporate some of this information is, if a school teacher calls the police saying, hey, this young child's been abused, I believe, and we show up and we talk to a bunch of people, but we never talk to the kid, it's not necessarily that the officer doesn't care or isn't conducting a thorough information. The officer probably has some of these things in mind that they don't want to re-victimize that child again and again and again.
And just make sure they get all sort of that information together before they even approach the child.
Exactly. Another thing we try to do is we always want to talk to the child by themselves. That way they can give their story without, somebody trying to fill in the blanks or coach them or
lead them
or any way. Yeah. It's especially if Martin's told me something before and then he goes to tell you, Daryl, I may try to interject and finish the sentence for him, and we don't want that when it comes to a kiddo, because it can kind of skew their statement.
Yeah. No, I imagine that's, again, sort of the key seems to be just handling that child in a way to get the best information. Again, it seems, when you're dealing, with parents or family members, anyone involved, I don't want to say that there's deception, but I just imagine a lot of that fact finding gets pretty difficult.
Absolutely. So then at that point, once the officers kind of conducted their minimal facts interview and talked to some other parties involved or the outcry person and things like that, if it's a felony level crime, they'll contact the Crimes Against Children unit if it meets our criteria. If it has to do with the kid but doesn't necessarily meet our criteria, they may contact another investigative unit.
Right.
But if it's a felony crime, generally speaking, it'll some sort of follow-on will be done by a investigative unit. If it's a misdemeanor, then the officer is the one that's responsible for prosecuting any crimes that have to do with that. And if there's no crime at all, we still document it in a report. That way, there's still some sort of record of what happened, or at least what the child said at the time. We also have the field officers are responsible for contacting CYFD to make to send their report to CYFD as well. A lot of times CYFD has a lot of resources they can provide to families. You know, if families need help with counseling or other things like that, they can kind of help with that. They're also responsible for calling our crime scene specialists out to take any photographs of injuries, or sometimes lack of injuries are just as important to document with photographs. So we'll do that, or the field officers are responsible for that as well. Or in sexual assault cases, contacting SANE for an examination. Our unit's also responsible for child death investigations, and so these we kind of treat essentially similar to a homicide investigation, right? Because generally speaking, children don't pass away, right? Kids are usually born relatively healthy. There's obviously always medical exceptions and things like that, but we treat these pretty importantly, because obviously it's very important. Like Martin mentioned earlier, children are true victims, and so if a child passes away, we're going to assume that something bad happened, and investigate that as such. So we'll do things like locate and secure the scene, canvass for witnesses, document anybody who may have left the scene. Sometimes, in the movies you'll see everybody always covers the decedent with a blanket, and especially with kids, nobody wants to have to look at a child who's passed away. But it's important for evidentiary reasons that doesn't happen. So if you guys, God forbid, are ever at a scene like that, then you would understand why the police officers aren't necessarily covering up any remains.
Wow. Okay.
And then SUDI cases it used to be called SIDS.
Sudden infant death syndrome.
Now so they've changed the name to SUDI, which is sudden unexpected death in infants, and it's again just unexplained deaths of babies. I think at one point it was also called like crib death, things like that. So it's just another name for it. But that's something we'll investigate as well.
Okay.
So once the field does that initial investigation, then they'll refer the case if it meets our criteria. They'll refer the case to the detectives, and then we'll conduct any follow-up investigations necessary. If we need to do search warrants, if we need to write arrest warrants, if we need to extract cell phones, photograph places, things like that. That's what the detective's responsibility would be, is to coordinate all of that and kind of do those things. As well as attend forensic interviews, which are interviews that are, and we'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about the multidisciplinary team, but it's essentially an interview conducted by a person who's specifically trained in interviewing children. So they're not asking leading questions, they don't have an agenda, they're not cops, they're not with CYFD, so they're just there to ask questions and hear what the child has to say, and not try to guide those questions in a one way or the other. If that makes sense.
And I imagine even for, you both mentioned your fathers yourself, so I just imagine it's very easy to get emotionally involved in those cases, especially when you have, a victim like that, and I imagine that's probably one of the hardest things, really sort of separating yourself to do that investigation, and having those professionals that can actually talk to the kids in that sort of non-confrontational way. I imagine it's an art form all to itself.
Oh, absolutely. They're incredible people, that's for sure. And then also, eventually the case, when it reaches the point for prosecution, we'll speak with the district attorney's office, and from there we'll proceed with the case in court.
Well, and also I'm imagining, again, trying not to put you mentioned the TV version of what happens in, but I imagine when the professional is sort of interviewing the child, you guys are behind the one-way mirror or whatever the thing is, sort of following that information. Is it something where you're working with them and asking them to sort of go back in, or is this something you sort of let them manage, this professional who's actually interviewing the child?
For the most part,
You kind of brief them beforehand. You kind of give them the logistics of the case and what's taking place.
Yeah.
And then they'll kind of be like, oh, all right, well, is there any kind of questions that would you like me to bring up? But that doesn't go to say that it's going to be a leading question, but it's
Right.
like, can they find a way that can open the door to that topic?
Yeah.
To where it's a very broad, but then it can lead down to something either that specific or something entirely different.
Yeah.
So we don't have like an earbud in our ear to,
Right.
you know, kind of like tell them sentence to sentence
Yeah.
as to what to ask this poor little kiddo that's going through this.
Yeah.
It's very much just you talk about it, the schematics of the case. They see what they can. They talk with this kiddo, build a rapport, and then they kind of have like this intermission. We'll have any follow-up questions, and then we'll proceed for however much longer it takes. It's always depending on case dependent, and then wrap the case up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, like I said, I'm just fascinated with the idea of just, again, for me, the idea of, you know, trying to get good information from someone who's been traumatized like that, and especially someone who just doesn't have the coping mechanisms, the ability to understand why those things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it seems like when you're investigating other crimes, there's a little more ability to sort of, you know, just get in there and work through the problems with the kid. You definitely have to be sensitive. I can imagine those things can go wrong very easily, or the child would shut down, and then and that would be frustrating for you guys.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's the case. Some kids don't always want to talk.
Yeah, no.
And you have to understand that, and you have to respect that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they flat out don't want to talk because they're shy, or they're scared, or they're nervous, or they're just not flat out comfortable, and that's just something you have to respect.
Yeah, yeah. All right, the next slide, or am
Yeah.
I? Okay, there you go.
So again, to kind of give some clarification out there for people who aren't on the law enforcement side of the world, you know, we always want people to go to jail right away, especially when they're hurting kids, right?
Yeah.
Even us, we want them to go to jail right away. A lot of times we may not make an arrest on scene or at that initial call, because there's a lot of back-end investigation that still needs to be done, like we talked about, the forensic interview, some of the other parts of our investigation. Sometimes we will make that arrest, and then it's more of a you're kind of expediting some of those other processes to make sure you get everything done in time. But a lot of these investigations do take some time, and so obviously we make sure that during the investigation the children are in a safe place, so they're not continuing to be abused or victimized, and then we kind of do our investigation from there. So I just wanted to kind of give that a lot of times they'll contact us, they're the CACU detectives on call, and see, hey, you know, this is kind of what I got, can I arrest this guy? And sometimes it's, you know, absolutely, go ahead, you guys got enough, you guys, you know, you got the case, you're good. Other times it's, well, hang on, because we're going to have to do all these other things. Make sure the kid's in a safe place for tonight, send us the case, and we'll follow up with it over the next couple days.
And is it you using other partners in the community to sort of ensure that safety, or I mean, how involved are you guys in actually ensuring that child's in a safe place, I guess?
So we coordinate with CYFD, and a little later we'll talk about the multidisciplinary team and kind of the role that CYFD plays in that. And so it's a partnership with CYFD basically to make sure that those kids are in a safe environment.
Oh, okay.
And so these are kind of the ways that we'll close a case out in CACU. And that is unfounded. That means that we found no probable cause that a crime occurred. Pending further leads means we may not have enough information at this time. We don't know who the suspect is, things like that we're not able to proceed with the investigation. So while the case is closed, it doesn't mean it can't be unopened later, right? Closed exceptionally means, you know, we do all this investigation with a child, and then we find out, oh, this all happened in Rio Rancho. That's not our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So we'll close it exceptionally and refer the case to Rio Rancho, and then they'll pick it up and continue with it, or anywhere else, other states or anything like that. Or if our offenders passed away, obviously, we can't charge them, and so that would be a case that's considered closed exceptionally as well. Sometimes we'll forward cases to the prosecutor as what we call non-arrest cases, and that's where they're going to take the case. They're still going to prosecute somebody. They're still going to bring this case to court. It's just not through the form of like an arrest warrant or an on-site arrest, right? Because sometimes, especially if there's delayed disclosures and things like that, there's other things the DA's office wants to be able to do in reviewing that case prior to bringing it to court to make sure that it's not that nothing falls through the cracks in court.
Yeah.
And then obviously an arrest is an arrest. I think most of us know that. So this is the multidisciplinary team, as you mentioned earlier. There's a lot of partners in the community that our unit partners with, and I think it's probably pretty unique in that we have so many non-law enforcement partners that help us in our job, and without them we really can't do our job. So that includes us as law enforcement, CYFD, UNM's CART, which is the Child Abuse Response Team, Sexual Assault Nurse Examiners, Para los Niños, the Child Advocacy Center or the Safe House, and then obviously the DA's office once the case is kind of resolved.
Next slide, there we go.
So again, CYFD, their responsibilities, they always try to preserve the family unit, and they conduct a separate investigation from law enforcement as far as abuse and neglect go. And so while law enforcement does a criminal investigation, they do more of a civil investigation, if that, I think that's probably a fair way to phrase it. And so we coordinate with them in order to enact safety, what are called safety plans, where the child may go stay with a safe guardian for a while during the course of the investigation in order to ensure that child's in a safe environment, like I mentioned. In some more extreme circumstances, we have the ability to place a child on what's called a 72-hour hold. And that means that for that 72 hours, that child is in the state's custody. And then from there, CYFD can file through the courts to get or to prolong that 72 hours or get full custody of that child.
Right.
So that's kind of CYFD's role in our investigations and how we partner with them as part of the multidisciplinary team. And then, like I mentioned earlier, they have the in-home services and resources and stuff for families as well that helps them out. And I kind of already mentioned the 72-hour hold. There's a state statute that supports that, and that it's law enforcement that are the ones responsible for making that decision. And then we sort of enact that through CYFD, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and again, the thing that comes to mind is just how a family unit, when it's sort of going through these problems, the kids get used as almost a weapon against each other. Do you get, I imagine there's a lot of times when your resources and energy are sort of spent on stuff that's not even really a crime.
So that's, I think, a benefit of being able to have the field kind of take the initial report, right? Because you're right, there's times that maybe there's a contentious divorce going on and somebody calls in a report on the other parent in order to try to get custody or use that later in court. And a lot of times those still get documented in a police report, but it doesn't necessarily always come to our unit to where we're expending the additional resources and the additional partners' resources as well to try to get to the bottom. Sometimes we still do because of the nature of the allegations, because regardless we're still going to investigate to see what's going on. But yeah, you're absolutely right that there's the potential there. It is a crime to knowingly make a false report to CYFD or law enforcement about child abuse. So there's those protections, but
okay.
And the safety plan again can last from 5 to 21 days. So all the reports that are made to CYFD about abuse and neglect, and we call them again Sky reports, SCI for statewide central intake, they basically get sent to APD. And so we've got a great team of professional staff who will process those or screen those reports, see which ones officers have already been dispatched to, which ones case numbers already exist on, what's already been investigated. If there's some that haven't been investigated, if it's something that we feel needs to be investigated kind of based on what the allegations are in the report, then we'll set up a call for service or assign a detective to follow up on those allegations. If we get it somehow, say one of the parents lives in Albuquerque, and calls CYFD. So the report has that address, but then we find out that this happened at a home in Rio Rancho, and looking at people's histories and things like that, then we can refer that directly to that other jurisdiction, and then they have the responsibility at that point to follow up on it. Some of them, it may not meet any sort of level of, needing law enforcement involvement necessarily. And so for those, we still keep them and we retain them, for documentation purposes or for history. Sometimes it becomes relevant if a family has an extensive CYFD history. But then when you look at the reports, they're kind of all not the most egregious things, right? Or, it's a lot of those contentious things where one parent's calling on the other. So those are important to keep for those reasons, right? Because if you just see somebody has a crazy CYFD history, and initially you're going to assume this person's a terrible parent, when that may not be the case. So that's another reason we hold on to those a lot. So in 2024, just to kind of give you a frame of reference, our folks screened 11,000 Sky reports. And I think last year it was closer to 14 or 15,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that's three folks doing that. So that's a lot of work for those guys to do, and they're incredible that they are able to stay on top of that and manage that. And
well, and then again, we've sort of been talking about these crimes sort of with the assumption that it's an adult or a parent or someone else who has access to a child that's doing this. But how does it change when it's another child or a sibling, or being bullied at school and that stuff? I imagine sometimes those things filter over and get reported, and then does it change your approach when it's another child that has done this?
So it certainly can.
Yeah, I think it's very much case dependent, and it's very much relies on what the case is, what the allegation is, what the crime is, how old are these kids, what the intent is behind it, and then obviously juvenile district attorneys will be involved. Obviously, our district attorney's office will be involved, but we do. And then obviously, if it happens on school property, it belongs to APS, right? And then they'll conduct their own investigation. But as far as when it comes to us, we still do essentially the same process as if it was an adult. It's just more of a child setting, I guess you would say.
Okay. Well, and you had mentioned we can't really go into the details of the social media stuff, but do you guys have? I almost think, is there a unit that just deals with some of that stuff that happened? Because with social media, it's just, we were talking before, kids are using it to victimize, to purchase weapons, to do all this stuff. I imagine at this point you almost need a specialized unit that just deals with that.
So we have the Child Exploitation Division, and so their responsibility is more like internet crimes against children. So like people who are trying to solicit children or send or receive inappropriate pictures of children, that kind of stuff. So they're a separate unit that investigates all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so CART, Sane, and Para los Niños, or PLN as we like to call them, because it's a lot easier and faster to say. So those are some of our partners as well. CART will provide medical examination for anybody or any child who's a victim of physical abuse, and generally it has to be relatively soon because they're going to look at the injuries, try to determine if there's any patterns to them, if there's any shapes where they can say, oh, that's based on their training as a medical professional, that's consistent with a belt buckle or a
cigarette burn.
Exactly. So they're really good at doing that stuff, and they can give a professional medical opinion on if those injuries are consistent with abuse or neglect, or if this is kids hurt themselves. They fall down, they trip. My son, when he was little, he tripped I think 3 times over 3 weeks and had the same knot on his head in the same spot every time he hit that one spot, and it looked really bad. It was just tripping. So, but yeah, kids fall down, and so that's what's nice about it, to be able to have a doctor that says, yes, kids fall, but this is why this isn't just a fall.
Right.
And then SANE will do any kind of sexual assault examination if the assault occurred within the last 72 hours, whereas Para los Niños will do it if it's kind of a longer than that 72 hours. or if it's a
There's an
repeated kind of thing.
interview process to even get to that point. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
All right.
And then the Child Advocacy Center or the Children's Advocacy Centers, they're the ones that do the forensic interviews, like we mentioned. It's a trained professional who's not law enforcement, not CIFD. They've got no agenda of their own. They're just there to ask a kid questions and see what the kid says, and kind of if they can get the kid to expand on some of that stuff without asking leading questions.
Right.
And so Martin touched on earlier that we'll try to say, hey, this is what happened. Or sometimes during the interview they'll take a break and say, hey, do you have anything else you want me to try to get to? And we'll say, hey, can you try to open the door to this type of stuff?
Right.
Or and again, it's difficult to ask a kid a question because kids are by nature people pleasers. So if I ask, if I ask a kid, did Martin hit you? If they want to, if they're a people pleasing type person, they're going to say yes. Martin never hit him, right?
Right.
But that's why we don't ask these leading questions and why we rely so heavily on them to conduct these interviews, because they're so excellent at not asking these leading questions.
Yeah. And then when it actually comes to the prosecution of the crime, are these children advocates testifying in the case, or does it go beyond that?
It's case dependent.
Oh, okay. So it depends on the actual situation. Okay. But, all right.
And then obviously the DA's office is the one that's going to provide law enforcement any legal advice. If we call the DA and we're like, hey, this is kind of what's going on in this case. I'm not sure, if I should proceed with it. Like, what are you thinking?
Right.
And so it's good to have those partners to where you can kind of, I guess, spitball the case, for lack of better terms, and they can give you some advice or say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And obviously within the unit, I know all the detectives will do that with each other and ask for advice and things like that as well. And then again, when it comes time to testify or prepare the victim for court, that's the DA's office does a fantastic job of doing all that. So
yeah, I guess that's sort of what I was trying to figure out too. Just the court aspect of this seems like a whole nother opportunity that the child might get, re-victimized, or so I imagine you have to do a lot to sort of continue that protection through the whole prosecution.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's going back to the child advocacy centers. I know they have a lot of resources and counseling and therapy and things like that they provide, or they at least offer to families if they want, to try to help support the kiddo. And the DA's office also has victim advocates who can kind of help to support those children through this process.
Okay. So we've come to the end. Looks like we're ready for some questions. I wanted to open it up to anyone on the call. You can just shout out your question or put it in the chat. Jared, did you have anything? Yeah, go ahead.
So you talk about the 72-hour hold period for a child. Where are they during the 70? Where do they go?
So CYFD will place them with a foster family for those 72 hours.
Do they try to do it with relatives, or?
So a relative would be more of like the safety plan kind of thing, to where they try that, and that's what they try to do initially, is a safety plan, right? A 72-hour hold is more of a last resort kind of thing. So with the safety plan, they'll try to place the child with a relative or like family friend or something like that, a responsible adult who's going to make sure that child is safe during that duration of the safety plan. And then again, if that fails, then that's when they'll go to a 72-hour hold, and then they're placed in with a foster parent.
So the bullying issue is a couple things. You could either have the physical bullying that goes on, which is more identifiable, but then you have the mental abuse, being constantly belittled, followed, all that kind of stuff, which is a different kind of trend, and in extreme cases can lead a kid to suicide on there. Do you handle those types of situations too with the mental abuse stuff?
So it's a difficult one to investigate, especially when you're talking about kids kind of bullying and teasing other kids. Obviously at a certain age, and it's very case by case dependent, it's difficult to prosecute children. Also, there's not a whole lot of laws, maybe even none, I think, as far as like bullying goes. Depending on the nature of the bullying, it can rise to other crimes if it's, threats of physical harm or other things like that. But if it's just teasing and bullying, there's not a lot of law enforcement intervention that can be done. So things like that, even with the field, When calls like that come in, typically we'll contact APS Police, Albuquerque Public Schools Police, so that way they can follow up with the school to try to get something worked out through the school, through counselors at the school or whatever programs the school might have to try to address those issues.
Do you think there's any laws in New Mexico that need to change that kind of tie your hands how situations are handled?
It's a challenging question.
Are there any new laws you'd like to see? You don't have to be specific, but are there any new laws you'd like to see in place that from what you guys have been doing and what you see and everything, that could improve things in handling the situations?
I think there's always room for new laws and legislation that can make things easier, can criminalize new behavior or other behaviors, and as Daryl mentioned earlier, with the rise of social media, I think a lot of our laws haven't necessarily caught up to that.
Yeah.
With social media bullying and things like that, right? I think it's difficult for us to get involved if there's not a crime, and so I think there's laws that could be created. I obviously am not smart enough or to speak on what those should be. But I think there's some laws out there that could help us do our job or at least protect children better, but I couldn't tell you what they are.
Okay.
Well, and that tends to be the issue with a lot of the problems that we sort of have. I think we sort of forget in our society we have these freedoms and rights that tend to get in the way of actually handling some of the crime and other stuff that, like you're saying, technology has changed everything. Our laws have not caught up to where the level of crime is with the internet and just trafficking and everything else. And when we were talking about substances and how fentanyl, so many things have changed, but yet the job that you guys do is still the same job. Mm-hmm. So I definitely feel to his question we have to figure out another way. I always, even with the officers sort of talking about the courts and bail we were mentioning earlier, there's all these back ends that would really just help the outcomes be a little more what we're hoping they should be.
They're at the front line, so they see everything. They know exactly what's going on. Excuse me. And if you get groups like ACLU get involved, but they don't know the total picture, that just muddles everything.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel we need stronger, laws and some of this stuff. But again, that's not for you guys to solve. That's for the community and people to really get involved in. I recently had went up to the legislative session earlier this year, and I was amazed to see that's how we still sort of create laws in the state of New Mexico. It seemed like a little backwards, and just not as effective as you would like it to be with lobbyists and all this other stuff. So I mean, even when he's asking, you guys, I do feel that you guys have a perspective and your point of view. We need to find a way to get that involved with that legislation, because I definitely feel like we're falling short on coming up with solutions, and then having you guys pick up the work.
And so I'm with the Prostate Cancer Support Association on the board. I went through it a couple years ago. So we were trying to find out advocates for us when we're in the city or the state sessions and stuff. And basically you're told, get a hold of a legislator that's been through prostate cancer. And similarly, it'd be, probably less, but has a legislator gone through where something, a child abuse or whatever, that you can get that connection to have an advocate for you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like we all should be advocates for the children of New Mexico is really the thing. I'm someone who just feels like our educational system needs a great deal of attention, and I just feel like we sort of, literacy rates, just so many other statistics that we tend to be at the bottom of. I just sort of feel that, kids shouldn't be the ones paying that price for our inefficiency as a community or as a society. But unfortunately, that's why you guys are here and committed to the work that you're doing. So I want to thank you for the work that you do. I know it's not easy, but I'm glad that you guys are dedicated to that work, and your unit. Like I said, I feel I've met several of the officers, and I just feel like you guys have an amazing attitude for the kind of work that you have to deal with. And thank you.
I think these guys put up with the brunt of it. They've got me, in their ear. Hey, what's going on with this case? What's going on with that? While they're still trying to maintain that composure and that sensitivity towards the family and the victims and stuff like that. And so I think these guys get all the credit for doing all the hard stuff out there and interacting with people. Like I mentioned earlier, my job's just to look at the big picture and make sure things are moving in the right direction. But these guys, as you mentioned, are the ones on the front line having to deal with all of it. And so enough can't be said about how much great work these guys do. They just got recognized by the district attorney's office for all their hard work that they've been putting in. APD just gave them an award for being Team of the Month. So they've been doing a lot of really great work.
Well, and in your experience, I mean, I talked some time ago here just about human trafficking and how it's, again, another one of those things that has changed with technology, and people aren't aware that it's happening, right around you at the Walmart and everything else. Is there something you guys have learned in your experience that people may not be paying attention to you that you think they should? Things that occur that just might be something we should be paying more attention to as far as just protecting kids. I mean,
be vigilant. Like don't be naive. Like stuff can happen. Like it's a crazy world out there, and I think like when people think of trafficking, and human trafficking for that matter, or even sex trafficking, that's taboo to some people, where they don't want to believe that it exists, when in fact it does, especially in Albuquerque, because we have the big eye.
Yeah.
I mean, we're literally perpendicular,
north, south,
east and west, right there, right, and stuff.
And
so
Mexico's not too far away,
right? And stuff. So it's like you need to just just be vigilant, be self-aware. Be cognizant of your surroundings. You don't need to be like hyper vigilant and go into like a manic state to where you got to be paranoid all the time. But it's always good to be aware of your surroundings and just to make sure like to look out for one another as well as for children. You know what I mean? Like, oh, somebody else will take care of it, or somebody else will call that in. It's like again, a child is a vulnerable victim. Like, you know what I mean? They're defenseless.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's always good to to say something, and I mean, it's your choice of whether or not you want to put yourself in harm's way, but I mean, at the same time, though, like, protect that child within means necessary to what you're capable of doing.
Well, and like you said, it may just be as simple as paying attention to what's happening. I talked about, bikes, it's bike month, and people are reluctant to create space for cyclists but in my opinion, if you're in a car, you should be looking out for the pedestrians. You should be looking out for the people on the side because they're more vulnerable. They have more jeopardy, and a child is vulnerable and in that jeopardy 24/7. So I definitely feel like we all could probably, like I said, do more in this state to pay attention to just the obstacles the kids are dealing with. We have a charter school right across the street, and again, I think about those kids and the exposure they have to downtown. Even their own view of where they look for help gets affected. Our kids running to you guys to say help, but like you mentioned, most of the time they're not the ones to even feel they have that voice. So again, I applaud you for the work that you do. I thank you for coming on and talking about it, sharing it on the Echo, and I'll try to follow up with you guys at another time and maybe hear about some good things that you were able to accomplish. And again, congratulations on the Team of the Month.
Thank you.
Well, cool. Unless anyone has any other questions, we'll wrap this up for today. I hope we get copies of the slides. Yes, Mike, you can have. I have the slides. I can share them with people if they. But our next session is scheduled, I believe, for the 28th. I have my old our old coordinator, Maria Wolf, will be here to talk about the state housing initiatives for unhoused people and some of the things that the state's doing to try to create some housing opportunities and initiatives. So we'll pick up with that in a few weeks. Everybody just try to stay cool out there as it gets hotter. From what I understand, the river's going to run dry in a few days, so hydrate.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We welcome your suggestions regarding any scenario involving future public safety echo sessions. For more information, visit www.cabq.gov/echo.